All right, good afternoon. We will bring our budget workshop meeting to order. Yeah,
All right. Is Jackie or Bobby going to work the slide presentation? I know Jackie and I are going to tag team because I know she can't sit down. She likes to walk, so I'll let her have the podium and I'll sit down. So we have 8 or 9 slides to talk to you tonight about. A lot of these slides you've probably seen before or numbers you've seen before. And then after this presentation, we'll talk a little bit about the 5-year financial forecast. It's sort of, we plug in all of the CIP and into the model and kind of give you a forecast of what finances look like. And then we open it up at any time for questions. As we go along, if you have questions, just stop, ask questions. And we probably have 2 hours left over for you to ask any question you like to. So we'll spend as much time as you want. There's several workshops you'll see later on that are coming up, or some social events that we'll have to talk about the budget coming up later that you'll see. But just to talk about what's in a lot of stuff you'll see tonight. Also, you'll see again May 6th, which is the manager's recommended budget. So hopefully we'll get some feedback. If you see some tweaks you want to see or some things you want to add, take out, et cetera, please let us know, because what you see tonight is pretty much what you'll see May 6th. So just to jump into real quick, obviously you're aware of some of the debt we're taking on with the town hall that we've got going behind us. And then I won't read out exact numbers. Obviously, you'll be able to see them on the screen. And then the GO bonds that were approved by voters, there's also some debt related to that, $58 million in bonds that voters approved, so there will be some debt associated with that.
In an effort to prove that we will tag team this a little bit, if there's something you see on one of these slides that you don't want in the draft budget, we'll be emailing you a draft budget in 7 days. So that's at least 120 page document. And so if there's something in here, you're like, oh my gosh, the consensus of the board is let's not fund that, or let's fund that at twice that amount, now would be a great time for you to speak up. The debt on new town hall has been issued. We know exactly how much we will need to make in a debt service payment. That's represented in the first bullet point. The second one, the 24 general obligation interest bonds, we have not issued debt. We won't issue debt without you knowing about it. But we have asked the Local Government Commission, which is a department of the State Treasurer's Office, to leave a placeholder for us, as we believe we will have spent down all the bond proceeds we have from previous issues, and will need to issue debt to continue some of the transportation projects we have in the CIP that we've talked about before. We think we're going to need to issue that debt as early as October 8th. So they're holding that date for us. I don't mean we have to issue date, but their calendar fills up, and so if we don't secure a spot on it, it will be much later when we issue. And we want to make sure that we have enough funds for the projects that we have on the books. Our interest and principal payment dates, generally speaking, on all of our general obligation bonds are December 1st and June 1st. If we issue on October 8th, we will at a minimum have an interest, probably not principal, but an interest payment date that first June 1st meeting. So we can't tell you if we think the interest only will be $1.5 million, but you do need a placeholder there, because there is likely to be an interest payment due if you issue debt in October. So thank you for letting me interrupt on that slide.
One payment.
I would recommend, there's some flexibility there on how long the bonds are outstanding. I wouldn't go ahead and make a payment on December 1st. If you issue October 8th, technically you will have had them outstanding for, what is that, 50-ish days. I wouldn't do that. I would delay an interest payment till the first payment in June. Generally speaking, we've done interest and principal in June, but there will be no projects that we will have done. So I think they will afford us the opportunity to make our first principal payment the following June, but you will not get out of making an interest payment.
Any questions on that? So on the capital that you saw April 15th, these are exact same projects you saw before. Should be exact same numbers. you see one particular project highlighted that was highlighted that we look at that project, moving that forward. Obviously, these are not total numbers for these projects. These are the numbers that you would see in FY '25. Some of these may be total numbers, but take, for instance, Gibson Park Drive Phase 2, that project's been ongoing. So we've spent money on those projects to sort of finishing that project up. So in FY, that's the last project on the list, it's $192,000 roughly in FY '25. Just like Farrelltown Parkway, cost more than $4 million. This is what's in FY '25, and so on and so forth. Huntersville Concord Warfield, the project that is moved up, which is basically the sharp curve on Huntersville Concord Road, just across the railroad tracks. That's only a portion of it. So just trying to get to design engineering, then you get into right-of-way acquisition or purchase of property, et cetera. So that's just the first phase of that. So a lot of these projects are different phases. A Waymo Park splash pad, for instance, would be for the total project. So various stages on all these projects. Can go through every one of them if you like, explain in great detail, talk about where they are in phases. We've got all the appropriate folks here to talk about as much detail you like. So I'll just stop there and be quiet and let you ask any questions you like of these projects.
Anthony, before you get started with questions, let's do questions, but Stephen wisely reminds me, I want to show you, call out two projects as examples. US 21 Gilead Mast Arms. There is a 20, 30-page interlocal agreement between us and DOT about exactly what that project is. I don't want you to think that we're spending $850,000 and the only thing we're getting in exchange for that is mast arms. We can't reduce a 20 or 30-page agreement down to about 5 words and fit on this one page. And so that involves multiple betterments, not just mast arms. Michael, I would say the Lake Norman Charter, Tennyson Park Complex as a multiple-page agreement, and you can see we inked all we could get out of that space. There's a lot of things involved in just one of these lines or one of these projects, and so we can't get every word of it up here. So it's improvements, or it's intersection improvements, or it might be, if it involves intersection improvements, it might have sidewalks and curb and gutter. There are multiple things other than just mast arms. So your patience, please, with what we were able to condense and get on this one slide. Questions now, please.
I had a few questions. I tried to drive around and get an idea of the projects that I wasn't as familiar with. And when it comes to the Farrelltown Parkway, clearly our most expensive expense this coming year, I think I'd like to know more about that. What the reason was. Going over there, there's still a ton of construction happening and houses out there. I wonder if there's a better way to prioritize that. It feels like that one might be able to be weighted on. I don't know, but I don't know all the information clearly.
Bobby, could you pull up, if you need to, go ahead and pull up the map on that. We brought old maps too, so maybe we can get to that project that will give a better description. So you can bear with us for a second. Bobby's going to try to find it real quick. Stephen, if you want to, you can get up and talk, and Bobby, I'm sure he'll find it in just a second.
Okay. Go back one.
There we go.
There we go. All right. So you see, I'm going to talk in general about the project and hopefully get maybe some more specific details on it. So kind of at the bottom, you can see Farrelltown Parkway goes north and south. A part of that is highlighted in pink. The portion that's highlighted in pink is the project. The portion south of Keys Meadow is part that was built by the development. The remaining part was not. Only right-of-way was set aside as part of when that rezoning was approved. Originally, I think back when the rezoning was initially submitted, the whole road was in there. But during the rezoning process, a portion of it was removed. So there's a project, let's say the project we're working on is to, I guess, finish that Farrelltown Parkway as it was envisioned through the development. There's right-of-way that would be set aside by the development for that. So there's no homes kind of in the middle of where the road would go. They're spread out to the sides on that. And so the project would extend that that 2-lane with turn lanes as needed through the development, and then also up there on Rama Church Road at the kind of the top of the pink T there. Put turn lanes there on Rama Church. And then also there's a sight distance issue there with adding a new street in, so part of the road would actually have to be lowered there. There's also many utilities. There's overhead, underground, you probably name it. It's out there along Rama Church Road, and so that also has to be relocated as part of it. This is not a short section of the road. This looks like a really small section, but when you get it, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not. So, and it's building all new road. There's no road out there to widen. This would be all new road for the Farrelltown part, and then widening and improving Rama Church up there on the top.
So I guess it's not that we don't, like, I'm not arguing that we don't need it. I'm wondering if it needs to happen next year or if it can wait. Just because there's a way to get to Rama Church from this neighborhood. There's not a lot of density in regards to the homes out there, and so we're spending a significant amount of money on something where, you know, we have so much pain points everywhere else. If you could prioritize, would you think this is a higher priority, or?
Well, say, do you want traffic commuting through a local street in a neighborhood, or would you rather them use a thoroughfare, which this will be a minor thoroughfare, so there won't be any homes with driveways on Farrelltown Parkway. So this will be more of a traffic mover, not a major highway, but more of a traffic mover. So instead of people taking, you know, Fred Brown and coming through the kind of through those local streets, they would use this to get from place to place. Also, you know, the homes are being built out there. It's a good time to also build the road before everything kind of gets built up and established. Good time to go ahead and put it in, so as people move in, they get accustomed to using that road.
Okay.
Can I piggyback on that for a second? Because I do have a question tied into Farrelltown. Because one of the things I was wondering, it looks like the majority of the cost of the project is in the recommended, or in, you know, the budget for next year. And I'm kind of wondering why it's not, like, what's making it not more spread out? Like, why is it all possibly coming through at the same time?
Sure. So what we've been doing over the past while, I'll say a couple of years, is working on the design and coordinating with utilities. That's a lower cost, but takes a long period of time. Now we're getting to the point where most of that has been done. We're still getting that work finalized. Most of that's been done. Now the bigger expenses of right-of-way, paying for the utilities, and the construction is that big expense at the end. So if a project, you know, takes 4 years to deliver, 3/4 of that cost is in that last year when it's being delivered. So you're spending just a little bit of money spread out over the first few years to get up to that point, and then that last year for construction. So that's why it's a whole lot at the very end.
And is that a bond project that we have in it? So obviously, if we're going out for bonds for their project, then ultimately, we're borrowing that money up front. Now, there's no way Stephen's going to finish that project, you know, all in 1 year, but we're borrowing the money, so that's the reason it's so front-loaded like that. We can put in the CIP, spreading it out, but you're technically borrowing the money, and so we clump it in at that point in time.
Yes, I say that if you're going to borrow the money and you're going to do that all now, yeah, we won't all get spent in a month. It'll take a couple of years, but unless you want to issue bonds, and Jackie or somebody else talk about bond stuff.
And fun might be a
That
relative
helps.
term, but it's fun to be with staff and hear the whispering that goes on in the corner. Think of the connectivity that would provide for the fire station that's going to be pretty close in that area also.
And that helps explain too, because I was looking at that, like the amount that's in the budget in relation to, it's saying it's not going to start construction until, not this summer, but next summer. So that helped. Thank you.
So we try to make assumptions on some of these projects, which ones may be ready, you know, sooner rather than later, especially if you're getting into right-of-way and those things when you start spending big-time dollars of what may be better in the first phase of bonds versus the second phase of bonds, et cetera. And how big of amount of money to use transportation reserve funds, all those kind of things. But this is one that we're making the assumption that we would use it in the first phase of bonds. You go back to that sheet, Bobby.
In regards to the Holbrook to Dallas connection, are we able to save the trees that are currently there, or that will we be losing additional trees?
So the Holbrook Street to Dallas Street, those trees should be out of the way. It's that little, I think, now hopefully, but that's where our house was, right behind Aldi,
Yeah.
in that little section. I don't know if we're affecting any more trees, Kevin or Steve?
There's like 3 or 4 huge, beautiful trees, and it looks like they're in the way, but they don't necessarily have to be, and I was just curious if they were or not, but you don't know?
Yeah, I don't know specifically. If they can stay, we'll let them.
Okay,
Well,
just curious. And then the North Neck Park playground replacement. I was curious about why. I took a look at it and, I didn't jump on the equipment or anything, but I know when we did an HOA change, it was like 40,000. I was curious about what all is involved with that project. I don't recall that one when we talked about it in the past.
So that playground's about 16, 17 years old. Some of the decks are starting to deteriorate a little bit, so we like to replace before they get too bad. All the new playgrounds we're doing the ported surfacing. It's more handicap accessible, so more ramps and so forth. So the more ramps you do, the more steel structure, the more the cost goes up for the playground. So that's kind of our goal with our new playgrounds.
Okay. Okay. Those are all.
I did have a question on the, well, both, one thing that's on there and one thing that's not, both related to Holbrook Park. And I just kind of wanted to hear the rationalization or the rationale behind adding the parking lot expansion now rather than having it combined with the park expansion as a whole.
One of the things is the future park expansion. We really don't know when that can happen or if it'll ever happen based on availability of purchasing the land. And with having 2 more pickleball courts and with the traffic out there now, we felt that it's probably more of a need now than later, is what our thought was.
Do we have a design for that parking lot expansion, or would that be part of what's being funded as a design? That's what I thought. Okay. And that was my only question on that one. And just the last thing, I know we discussed this, I think, at our pre-meeting. I just wanted to confirm, well, one thing that the North Mech crosswalk is not listed because,
Yeah, that's, Stephen will come back, I think, second meeting in May, to give you some proposals to the board, but we're funding that out of FY '24. So whatever the board decides to do, we would, if needed, we do a budget amendment and do that now. We don't want to hold off on that. So we would do that immediately if the board sees fit to move forward with that.
and also with the sidewalk additions, and this is my last question, I do have some concerns that it doesn't seem like we have any. I know there's sidewalks versus side paths, and I know there's pros and cons to both and cost and whatnot, but it doesn't sound like we have any additions in the budget that are more of that multi-use path. Is that still correct?
So we have, I think these here are more of the sidewalk. I don't know if there's any side paths to this here. But if there's side paths that we want to put in here, or that the board says that they want to put in, we'd be all for that. Side paths, sidewalks. A lot of these projects we have now are just like a road. You got to design it, you have to buy right of way, et cetera, so it takes some time on any of those. But I know staff met, I think with Brian and Heather the other day on some of the, looking at whether we can convert some of these areas from sidewalk to side paths. So we're looking at that now. We'll be meeting with Stephen probably on that to see if there's some options to do that. If we hadn't already designed, engineering, bought right away for it. Problem with some of these bike plans and that we have, they change, it feels like every year. One time it's a 5 foot, then it's a 6 foot, then it goes from no bike lanes on the street to side paths. So we're modifying our plans as we move forward. If it's not too late in the game and we haven't already purchased right away on it and designed it, and it's one to be converted to a side path, and we would do that. But if there are other side paths out there that you think are very high up on the list that we need to do, I don't think Jackie would slow you down. She's chomping at the bit for every sidewalk and side path we can get.
If you can remind us with the sidewalks and the 500,000, like that amount, like how much, if we're just talking pure sidewalks, not the side paths, like how many feet of new sidewalks would an amount like that get us?
Yeah, that's not a whole lot. To give you just some comparison, the Huntington Green sidewalk project that's out there under construction, if you drive out there and see, that's a little over a mile of sidewalk, and you're in the $4.5 to $5 million range. So $500,000, you're not going to get a whole lot. These are your smaller, shorter connections, maybe a couple hundred feet here, a couple hundred feet there, that we have to do minimal grading, minimal property acquisition. That's these types of projects. If you really want to do a major project, I think I can't remember if there was one, like Ransom
Ransom Road.
sidewalk. See, you're closer to $3 million for probably less than a mile of sidewalk along that. So if you really want to do lots of side paths and really make some larger connections, it'll take some significant dollars to make those happen. Be glad to do it. Just let us know where and what you'd like to spend.
This sidewalk additions number is about small connections. Later in this presentation, I think you will see a different figure associated with the maintenance of sidewalks and where we need to do some ADA compliance to work on maybe ramps and unevenness.
I have two questions. The first one, the Arahova, is that how it's pronounced? Drive roundabout, there's the hotel back there, right? Could the hotel chip into the cost of this repair?
So that roundabout has been in place. What this is all about is modifying that roundabout that's there. And it's part of the overall 21 project too. And we're looking at doing some modifications to that roundabout that may be less than what was originally proposed. Stephen, want to jump in?
Yeah, and the roundabout needs to be upgraded. There's a new connection to the Food Lion Shopping Center that's out there. There's a back way to get out that way, and large trucks that can come out of that now can come out this way to get to the new traffic signal that'll be going in there by the credit union. And so to make sure that those trucks can get through there, the roundabout needs to be modified to accommodate those larger vehicles.
Okay, thank you. And then 115 McCord to NC 73. Can you talk a little bit about like the end goal projected benefit? Like I'm just trying to imagine all the connectivity that could happen as a result of this.
So the NC 115, I touched something there, sorry. That project is a project that the town applied for CRTPO dollars for a couple of years back, and it's to widen existing 115 between 73 and McCord. Currently, it's a two-lane section. It's pretty congested through there, and so this project would make it four-lane divided and then add bike ped accommodations on both sides of the road through that whole section. So that was the intent of that project when we applied for that funding. So the town has to put up some match dollars. It's not 100% allocation from CRTPO. There's a match associated with that. So the difference between what we get and the total cost is what the town has to put up for that. And so I guess the ask is to get started on that. We've been allocated the funding, but we haven't started on that one yet. And it'll take, this is probably a 6 to 8 year type duration of project to go through because of the process and also the federal process and dollars associated with it.
And this would help get all the new residential, not only Northstone, but all those developments, residential developments on McCord, as they come out, help funnel those folks out to 73 a lot faster.
question, I'm sorry. The Weymouth Park splash pad. There was a presentation given on Saturday from the Mecklenburg County. And so I know that part of the county owns certain parts of it, town. He spoke on parking lot expansion. Where would the splash pad be in conjunction?
So the splash pad would be, you know what a restroom building is with a shelter? Then
Yes.
it's like an old storage building behind it.
Okay,
It'll be in that flat area
okay.
above the basketball courts.
Okay, and so with that, I know he also spoke about the Mecklenburg County, they went through Communities Block Grant. Where is our funding source? Where are we,
So ours would be general fund, I believe.
general fund?
That's where ours is coming from.
Okay,
On the splash pad?
yes,
Yes.
okay.
Fine.
All right, thank you.
Mayor, these are all good questions. Maybe I should have just went through everyone and did that. But no, this is great. This is exactly why we're having these meetings, so. And I'm more than happy to go through every one if you like and explain in great details, but y'all are asking great questions, so we're, ask away. You ready to move to the next slide? Okay. So you haven't seen these are more operating capital items. You know, everything from pickup trucks to dump trucks to some studies. I'm gonna go through and probably explain these, and staff may jump in and help out. But, so HFFA, we have a 50-meter pool there. And as far as we can tell, I guess it hasn't really been replastered. It's been patched up, you know, over the years. And eventually, over time, if you don't replace plaster, you get cracks in it, water seepage, all sorts of things. So it's, I don't know when, probably since the beginning of time is what we can figure out when the last time it was plastered. So it needs to be replastered. We have talked to the HFFA committee and ran this by that group. We would pay for this out of tourism dollars, tourism funds, if I recall right, Jackie, on our replacing. So tourism fund balance is what we use to pay for this. I will keep going, and then if you want to ask any questions as we go along, please do.
Anthony, can I add specifically related to that one? It might be smart. There is some ductwork that's going to need to necessitate closing the pool for part of August. And so clearly you need to close the pool to replaster. So there's some economies of scale with only closing it one time. So if we decided to do that, it might be a smart time to do both those projects at once.
Yes, you're correct. Part of the reason too, not only did it need to be replastered, but timing is a perfect timing for it to do it with some of the shutdowns, the HVAC and the ductwork, et cetera. So it makes sense if we can do it, if the board's okay moving forward with this project, to do it now rather than shutting the pools back down again. So that was part of that. Replace PD vehicles. Every year, so many vehicles to replace as we have rolling stock. And we surplus those vehicles and bring in new ones. You're probably thinking, because we hadn't got the personnel yet, why 10 more vehicles go on top of that? But that's for 10 new officers that you'll see in probably the next slide, maybe is personnel. But so with those 10 new officers, 10 new cars, the 2 CRTPO project studies, I think Stephen probably gave you a good example a little while ago, that McCord Road, 115 to 73. That was a project sometimes we'll do studies on to see if we can get some CRTPO funds and will they qualify, do they score high enough? So what we typically try to do is put some funding aside to look at projects like that to see if we can't go after those funds. That's what this is all about. Barry and North Mech lighting controls. Instead of going by and, the old way of flipping the light switch on here and there, like at maybe your house, or going to turn a knob to turn on lights and stuff like that. Now you can do all that stuff by phone instead of a person going out there to check on it, turn them off and on. When you rent a field, we can do all that right there. Tremaine can set all that up. Lights turn on, off, bathrooms locked, unlocked, those kind of things, because we do have some vandalism. We probably don't want lights on at 1 a.m. in the morning, those kind of things. So with technology, we continue to advance in all of our fields and all of our bathrooms. We put door locks. We do the timers that you can work on your phone or by computer. So that's what the Barry North Mac lighting control. The item below that, park auto door locks at 3 different parks. Same thing there. That's with controls by phone or at the computer. You're not having a person to go unlock the bathroom, lock the bathroom at night, et cetera. Fire station access control, same thing that we're doing in all of our new buildings, key card access. So we know who's coming, who's going. Parks dump truck, probably don't need to say anything about that unless you want to know the exact year and model. MJ may be able to tell you that, I don't remember off the top of my head. Parks pickup truck, normal rolling stock replacement. At HAP, Huntersville Athletic Park, there's a walking bridge that needs to be replaced there. HAP roofing, Huntersville Athletic Park roofing, that's on the, is that the bathroom building? Or the? Yeah. 27 is probably a good year to replace them. Bradford softball warning track, so that in your fields and your outfields and stuff, you have warning track. So some gravel, I call it gravel, or clay replacement in the outfields of the softball fields. Park golf cart replacement, park facilities cameras, a park ride-on blower, and then Holbrook Park roofing. I think you probably saw an email on maybe on the shelter out there, but that shelter actually needs to be replaced, which we're looking at replacing. And then the bathroom building there, same thing, roofing replacement, just normal wear and tear that we need to replace. Some of these numbers are obviously a lot smaller, but this is the operating capital that we're proposing in this fiscal year's budget. And we'll stop there and let you ask any question.
I just have one question, probably for Chief Graham. What's our current size of the police fleet? Thanks.
All right, we'll move to the next slide then. I thought personnel was coming up at some point in time, but from a personnel side of things, positions, police officers, as you probably saw in a previous slide, the 10 new cars, we're looking at 10 officers. I wish I could tell you we could hire 10 officers July 1st. There's no way possible with the processes you have to go through and background checks, et cetera. We will look to hire 5 in July and 5 in January is what we would propose. The last time, and Jackie, you'll have to help me, the last time the town actually funded police officers, I want to say additional police officers, was FY17.
Yes, sir.
Now, don't get that mistaken with when we entered into a contract with the county to take over the ETJ and patrol the ETJ, because CMPD was doing it. They provided that funding and we hired some officers there, but that was related to taking over the ETJ. SRO in schools, when we when the schools wanted a couple more SRO, they funded the majority portion of those, but actual new officers, I'll say on the street, that the town put funding towards was FY17. I think I came in 18, so even before me. So just to put that in perspective. I hate to even say anything, are we still full today? Holy smoke, I better not say anything else again.
So just to clarify, so you're saying we've had the same amount of positions within the police force since 2017?
So we've added positions, but town funded, because when we entered into CMPD, Charlotte, CMPD patrolled outside of the town limits.
Right.
And then when we took that over, someone had to patrol it. So what Mecklenburg decided to do, they decided to contract with us, and to be able to provide service out there, we hired additional officers to patrol those areas. They paid for that.
Okay.
And it has been difficult for us to fill sworn positions, so we have added several non-sworn positions, and the victims advocate positions are additional examples of non-sworn positions we've added. But town-funded sworn positions, it has been an appreciable period of time, and I would remind you, Bobby, do we still put on our website a copy of the slides that we discussed at our planning workshop where the chief displayed our officer count per thousand? And as you can imagine, we've added many, many residents since 2017, but to not have added any officers, that officer count per thousand has declined.
Yeah, I think if I recall, and I'm just rounding numbers, but I think if we looked at the sort of generic population numbers, et cetera, we're 38 to 45 behind. I couldn't hire that even if I wanted to, so 10 is realistic. You know, hopefully we can hire 10. You know, like I say, this is the first time we've been full in a long, long time. I don't know when the last time we were full. I'll have to ask Laura to look back through the history books, but it's been a long time, so I don't want to jinx. We already know we have at least 3 officers going to be retiring soon, so.
And admittedly, part of the lack of funding the position since 2017 was an inability to get to the headcount that we had already funded.
So no need for me to ask for more when I can't even get to my full number, so that's been a lot of the holdup too, so hopefully we can stay full.
Question for Chief. We're focused on sworn officers, but we had quite a few complaints about where we weren't notified about this incident or that incident. Are you fully staffed on your non-sworn positions?
Say that last part again?
Are you fully staffed in your non-sworn positions?
Yes, sir.
Because when we look at funding for public safety, sometimes we fail to remember that you have positions behind the scene that also support our police force.
Yes, sir. We've filled in all of our positions, including the last 3 people that got put on our civilian staff was our victims advocate? Yes, victims advocate. Train left the station. Try to get it out of my mouth. Other than that, everybody else is up to staff. We filled in all of our administrative assistants, our records clerks, everybody else is filled. So we're full all the way around.
So I will move to the next position, communication specialist. I know Ethan's back there taking a nap, but he does need, I'm kidding. You know, I probably don't need to say a whole lot about what he's been doing, you know, trying to get us up to par and obviously push out as much information as possible, but he's a one-man show and he needs some help. That's what that one's all about. Parks and Recreation, park repair technician, as we continue to grow our parks and do more in the parks. That's what this position's all about. Planning is, right now we have a planner 2 for a half year, but I'm hoping Brian, I think he's almost full. I think he's only down 1 position right now. So we're hoping he'll get that position full. Obviously, things doesn't seem to be slowing down. There are people building just right around town. You see orange barrels, you see dirt flying everywhere, and as more plans continue to come in, so that's what this position's all about, a planner 2. IT, which is, I don't quite know what a junior systems administrator is. If you told me to find it right now, I'd have to bring Larry up here, but it's help desk to continue to help with cameras, computers, laptops, copiers, all the door access, you name it. You saw the whole list of things that they do. If it's remotely looks, smells like a computer, anything like that, phones, Larry handles it. And that's what this position's all about. So those are the positions that are proposed in FY25, and I will be quiet, and Jackie probably has some.
We just point out those are the new positions that, unless somebody speaks up tonight, will be included in the budget that the manager's recommended budget will propose 1 week from tonight. If there's not questions about this, if there are questions, we're happy to chat about them. But among existing staff, if memory serves, is what the next slide's about.
So included in the personnel budget, and Jackie will probably jump in here at some point in time, I'm sure, but back, I would say 3-4 years ago, maybe more, we converted over to COLA and merit. It used to be way back when, 1 year was COLA, maybe 1 year was merit. I don't know the rhyme or reason behind that, but then we finally decided, I'd say 4 years or so ago, to convert to COLA merit. So how do we come up with COLA? Is Jackie just making this stuff up? Anthony just pulling it out of midair? No. The way we do that is we look at the calendar 2023 CPI for all urban consumers. That's the number we propose to you. You got to pick a point in time. You know, Anthony can't just pick a point in time that's good and one, you know, and try to change it up every year. That we pick one point in time, and if it's 0, it's 0. If it's 10, it's 10. If it's 4.1, it's 4.1. We don't make that up, and that's what's submitted to the board and recommended on the COLA. Last year, I will say the COLA was actually 8, so what was it, Jackie? I'm trying to remember.
0.0.
8.0?
Yes, sir.
And you'll probably hear about this later on in some of this information. Obviously, the board did not fund 8.0. You can tell them what they funded.
4%. I wanted to defend, or I want to explain a little bit. My recollection is that historically, we moved our ranges if we were implementing COLA, cost of living. In the years when we didn't implement COLA, we did not move the ranges. And so the ranges were moved then every other year. Well, it gets hard to defend. What was COLA 23 months ago, 24 months ago? So there was a disconnect. I would also say we picked the prior calendar year as an easy way to defend. Now, CNBC, you all watch economic news just like I do. We can prognosticate and assume what we think the Fed or smart, intelligent economists think the economy is going to do for the next 12 months when we're paying our employees. But you can't argue what it was in the prior 12 months. And so we got out of the what do we think it's going to be, and we said, you know what, regardless of what it was, our employees have been impacted by the purchasing power of the salary dollars we're paying them for the previous calendar year. So that way we're not prognosticating, we're not guessing what CPI is going to be in the future. We can tell you what we actually experienced in a previous 12 months, and it's quite frankly, it's just easier to remember to calculate it January to June. We could go back and get it for you for what it was, April to March. We could go find that, but it's just easier to calculate it based on a calendar year basis.
So we be consistent every year, and that's why we do that. Also, on top of that is a 2% merit as what's being proposed, and you may say, Anthony, what is the 4.1 and the 2% cost, you know, in dollar amount that's there in front of you? 1.4, 1.5 million is what 6.1% is. What does each percent cost? $277,000. You were here, and I think you've heard us talk a little bit about there. We obviously, previous board said, hey, let's do a pay study. We did a pay study. You were here about that May 6th. We anticipate that cost on top of what you see here is somewhere in the $450,000 range. Part of the problem is, as Jackie was talking about earlier, when you don't adjust, you know, some of the ranges and stuff with COLA, if you don't adjust those ranges, you tend to get behind. That's probably why 4 or 5 years ago, the board said, okay, we need to stick to something and stick to it. Well, we didn't stick to it last year. Probably would have stuck to the COLA. This $450,000 wouldn't be there. You know, look at the percentage. If 1% is $277,000, it probably would have took care of that, and we probably wouldn't be in this situation. But it is what it is. That's the decision we made at that time. So you'll hear more about the pay study May 6th. Someone will come tell you all about that and what we did, you know, what we proposed, and how much of this is related to moving ranges and things like that. So there's all sorts of things related to this pay study that I'm not prepared to talk about tonight. We have someone who's an expert in that will talk to you on May 6th. But we have just letting you know this is sort of the impact of that pay study is a $450 on top. Now, if you say, Anthony, we're not doing the 4.1 and the 2%, obviously the pay study is more what we're able to handle the entire pay study with the 6.1 plus 450. But if you cut out some of the 4.1 and the 2% merit, obviously the 450 is higher. So the total pay study sort of impact is almost 2 million, at $1.9 million. But the merit and the COLA eat up most of that.
Just one quick, the pay study, does that account for, are we including police officers, our minimum salary for starting officers? Is that part of this pay study?
So yes, every employee is involved. So there are some range adjustments that, and if I recall, don't hold me to it, I think some of the ranges for police officers will be moving. And Jackie, I don't have
Yes,
it in front of me.
I bet Laura remembers off the top of her
It's fine,
head
I
how much
just-
the ranges might move, but I feel compelled to add a little bit of commentary. So we developed a habit of checking the market for 1/3 of our positions every year. And so theoretically then, every third year, you would have looked at market related to what your job titles were to see if you're paying the right market amount. The board, when they adopted the FY24 budget, think about COVID and inflation and the rate at which employee rates of pay were changing. So it was decided when we adopted the 24 budget, then rather than do that would have been up that year, 1/3 of the workforce, just do them all, because we were concerned that so many were moving so rapidly. And so the board funded a study to look at all the positions, and so that's what's been done. The consultant will give you details. He's scheduled to be at the pre-meeting at our next meeting. I hand wring desperately over the dollar figure about on the last bullet point of this slide. We discussed changing it today because we got a revised estimate that I think they'll revise tomorrow. So the number that I have the least faith in being exactly 450, I literally ask, hey, if we think it's going to be about 450, if it was really 480, or if it comes in at 416, is about 450 the right number? I can't tell you how personally I've hand wrung over that 450 number. Is it 450? Is it 500? And it really bugs me. So it's changing literally now, and so I'm not sure if it's about 450, but I want to re-emphasize what Anthony just said. It's not unusual in our experience here that the board chooses to do a employee total increase different than what the manager recommends. So if you go up from 6.1, I'm not sure that would impact the pay study number a lot. But if you decrease the 6.1 total percentage by much, then you will not have accomplished what the consultant suggested is you're behind market if you don't do more than the 450. So those are some related items.
What's next? This is the slide you probably all been waiting for. So obviously, what is the manager going to recommend for a proposed tax rate? 22.75, and it's pretty self-explanatory on the sheet of what some of these impacts have. The FY24 rate, which is now, is 17.6 cents. You recall that Davenport came in and our financial advisors and looked at debt service. Obviously, when we did the bonds, we even had to list on the bonds to the voters that this could have a 2.8 cent tax increase impact. And that's what the 58 million, that's what 2.8 cents is why you see that on here.
Can I add some color commentary there too? So my interpretation of the financial advisor's advice was if your objective is to minimize the impact on the tax rate, the earlier you implement the rate, the more you could minimize that. So if you were going to approve the ballpark $30 million in debt on Newtown Hall, which actually ended up coming in at 27.4, and if you were going to attempt to minimize the tax implications of the $58 million in bonds that the voters approved in the fall of '23, if you go ahead and increase the tax rate 2.8 cents the year after that approval happened, then you could probably limit it, the debt capacity to 2.8 cents increase on the tax rate. If you wait later, it would need to be higher. That's a little non-traditional from what we've ordinarily done, because what has ordinarily been done is to have an increase when you issue that debt. So if we plan to issue debt in '24 and in '28, have an increase, a smaller increase in a small increase in each year, it's their advice that if you do that, then it's going to be a higher amount later. I would also say that was their debt affordability analysis. A debt affordability analysis looks at how much debt you could take on and what impact that would be to the tax rate. It has nothing to do with what you would pay your town employees. It has nothing to do with what positions you might add. It has nothing to do with future cost of additional capital you might fund outside of your existing list. It has nothing to do with how much CPI might change your solid waste contract in the future. So it doesn't look at operating or personnel. It just looks at debt affordability, how much debt you could afford and what the impact of just that debt that debt would fund in capital would have on the tax rate. Thank you.
And then we're all aware that obviously we're bringing fire department in-house. We have, and made that conversion, and we'll continue to make that conversion. The only thing left is basically assets, and I think assets will probably come on over by the end of May, and everything will be converted over. That's what Jackie wants something to add there?
So what I would say, what I would say about the fire number is we commented that when we added the 18 full-time firefighters in December, there would be an impact of that. And when we converted the part-time employees to town employees that would receive benefits, there would be an additional cost of that. Off the top of my head, the sum of those two numbers was ballpark $1.9 million, and a penny generates ballpark $1.6 million. And so there is an ongoing cost to the budget for the addition of those employees, full and part-time.
So then police, we just talked about adding 10 police sworn positions. Really not a whole lot more to say there, the cost associated with that. And then you add those up, those categories, 22.75 cents. Obviously, as Jackie told you forward, various other personnel and things like that, not even included in this, and various capital and ongoing capital, et cetera, not included in that. But what kind of impact is that if probably average home, depending on who you ask, average sort of tax value on a home in Huntersville's probably somewhere between $450 and $475. I think Jackie at one time saw a $460 number, so we use a $460 number. So what is that additional monthly cost on a home valued at $460 is a little less than $20 a month is what that impact is. We can put whatever number you want in there, but we just picked that as what an average value of a home would be and what impact would be. We talked about various fees. Right here, we just talk about solid waste fee, but we're not proposing any changes to the solid waste fee, even though the cost from garbage and stuff is going up. None of the fees would be impacted as far as a transportation fee, any of those fees, we're leaving alone. There may be some slight changes to electricity fees, but those are more related to solar and things like that, that we may be bringing back a policy to you on that in the very near future. Anything else to add there, Jackie, on fees?
There is no proposed change to the land development fees, and there is no proposed change to the solid waste fee that, generally speaking, shows up on a Charlotte water bill.
Or stormwater fees or anything, so those all stand the same. I'll stop there.
So basically, looking at this, with the proposed 22.75 tax rate, that will still have us lower than some of our neighboring communities, if I'm not mistaken.
So Cornelius has a lower tax rate, but Davidson does not, and Charlotte does not.
Cornelius is the only one.
Yeah, Cornelius will be the only one.
And even at this number, I'd have to look back at the sheet, but it's still lower than, I think, all of them, but maybe Cornelius.
It is.
One of the last things that I did before I walked in here was working on the manager's message that you can get, if not before, a week from tonight. And of the top 20 population in North Carolina municipalities, the average tax rate is 50.8 cents. So we still be less than half of the average. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Would it be possible to get, at the next budget meeting or next time it comes up, a breakdown, kind of like a low, median, and high, rather than just a 460, to show like what
Sure.
what the monthly would look like? And one thing I'm just wondering, and I'd love to hear if it's just not even possible this year, but if we do end up passing a budget with a rate increase at that new rate, how challenging would it to be for the town to have something like Davidson has, that tax assistance relief program that they did last year with the property tax revals? How challenging would it be for Huntersville to set up something so folks who are on fixed incomes and at our lowest economic or income brackets may have some form of assistance?
I may have to turn to Patty and Jackie on that one. They may be a little more seasoned on that than me. Can we do it? If the law allows us to do it, we can do it. We haven't done any research on
I
it.
agree. If the law allows Davidson to do it, I don't know why the law wouldn't allow us to do it. Having said that, the more you, we've prepared the budget thus far based on a 22.75 cent tax rate for all taxpayers. So if we're going to change that for some and make it lower, then it might necessitate the 22.75 to generate the same amount of revenue. It'd be higher for some people, but we got colleagues in Davidson that will return our calls. We figure out how to implement it. When I give you the statistic that the average tax rate is 50.8 for the top 20 in population, that's a 24 adopted rate. I don't know any more than you all do what might be adopted in 25, and they might be considering increasing or reducing. So that's how 22.75 would compare with the FY24 adopted rates.
Let us do it. We'll do just some quick research. We can make a couple calls, Davis, and kind of see how that process worked, how many actual people were impacted. Obviously, it'd be different here, but maybe we can do some little gauge to find out that information, what their policy is, and
I will.
be able to address that.
So
I believe Davidson's doing it with donations and not town funds.
So I was about to, so by statute, we have to charge every taxpayer, residential, commercial, the same rate. And so if they have a rebate programs, that's going to be different. Also, we're happy to chat with them. When they implemented the solid waste fee, they did have a program about how you qualify. We should make sure all of our taxpayers know that Mecklenburg County has on their site. We'll get them a person's name for anybody that needs help. There is an elderly exemption. There's a homestead exemption related to farms, and I really believe there's some assistance for veterans. So all of those things that people qualify for, they should absolutely pursue.
I do have another question. One thing that hasn't really come up at all is medic. And I know like that last year, is that kind of staying flat this year in terms of increase? Have there been any major increases and what our costs would be, what, we're paying for medic?
So medic, and the chief may want to get up and talk a little bit about this, but we receive some funds for calls. We're first responders, so we get some funds for that. It's a small amount of funds that we get from the county. It's $100,000. And we get some supplies based on, our supplies that we use up that are funded or given back to us, but there has been conversation between the managers, and actually there's probably email in the last week or two of that funding model or structure or formula is antiquated and old, and it needs to be updated. So we have proposed that to Dina we need to relook at that formula because it's, I forgot how many years old.
I wince the way you word it because Medic has made a cost per call payment to the fire department, and now that the fire department is effectively folding into the town, we've worked through the application process for those funds in FY '25 to come to the town. I don't anticipate an issue, but those medic funds have not traditionally come to the town, but they will in the future, now that we have the fire department directly.
But it is being looked at as far as it needs to change. Now, is that going to be millions of dollars? Probably not, yeah, but can we continue to, as the cost of supplies and the cost of, personnel to respond goes up, then so should that formula. That's the general conversation we're having. All right, so what's not included, a couple of things that we've talked about, and reasons why. On nonprofit funding, obviously, we have nonprofits that have expressed an interest in some funds, just like we do every year. I think last year was our first year, Emily, Jackie, that we decided, to actually pull that out of the budget process. You hate to argue over $5 in a $110 million budget. But we decided to pull that off and handle that separately, typically in the July timeframe. And then what we would do is that also allows you, if folks are on the board or involved in those nonprofits, to recuse themselves. It doesn't get muddied up in the budget process. So, I have to recuse myself over this $20,000 request, and we're trying to adopt the $110 million budget. So Emily saw when she was doing the research that quite a few other towns are doing this way, and we moved to this last year, and it seemed to work a lot better on dealing with these one-off situations, et cetera. So anticipate July, we'd come back, sit down and have a discussion on all the nonprofits. Obviously, Emily does a research. What can we fund them? Does it fit within the statute, et cetera? And then you all have those discussions, and then we would do the appropriate budget amendment as needed. So that's for nonprofits. So there is nothing in this budget, but we anticipate a budget amendment in July. And then obviously a couple topics that obviously we're continuing to have discussion on. And I don't know if this is appropriately worded that way I have it in here right now, but attainable housing. Obviously, there's a lot of discussions on that. There's been discussions on, do we partner with various agencies out there? Do we look at, partnering with Charlotte? Do we look at maybe doing something with, CDC up in the Cornelius? There's talk of maybe putting aside $150,000 for, attainable housing to start that effort. However, we can put it in this budget, or we can do a budget amendment at the appropriate time. So we can have that discussion, and the same thing really with sustainability efforts that we're doing in projects. We can handle it both ways. So both of these really wording are the same. So we can handle it multiple different ways, fund it right now, wait for a project comes forward, or do it later for budget amendment. So I'll be quiet and open it up for questions and or comments.
I would like to see us add into the budget the $150,000 so that we show that Huntersville is making a commitment to attainable housing. How we ultimately spend that money will be determined at a later point, kind of like the way we're sort of handling nonprofits. There's a bucket of money, but I think we've been meeting as a group and have some ideas, but I would like personally to see us put a stake in the ground and make a statement on behalf of Huntersville.
Is there sort of just all I need is more of a general consensus? I don't necessarily need a vote on that. If I see majority hit, at least 4 heads nodding up and down, then I know what to do. Okay. Okay.
Do you want to take a straw poll?
I'm good. When I present it May 6th and they see it in there, I guess they'll either say no or yes. But I'm saying yes.
So our plan will be to vote on the budget June 3rd. And once you vote on the budget June 3rd, the tax rate's set for the year, but everything else about that budget ordinance can be amended. And if you choose to move forward with the $150,000 toward attainable housing, that's great. We'll just need a little direction about how you eventually want that spent. Otherwise, we'll not know what to do with that.
It'll be sitting there to handle our projects or work with agencies as you see fit as we define that, but it will be included in the manager's recommended budget. And then, so then I would move to sustainability, any efforts and projects that I know we're working on, and I know we're looking at seeking some grant funds also on that. So you give me some direction on that, and we'll be prepared to handle it either way. And we don't have to solve that tonight. If you're not ready yet, there are multiple different ways we can handle it, so I'll be quiet.
Anthony, do we have any kind of estimate on like what the nonprofit requests are going to be?
Patty, you have that total number in front of you? I would say it's probably 250,000 max.
Okay.
That's all in. It's probably less than that, but I'm gonna say 250,000 max.
Okay.
Are there any slides, do we have anything on the general fund balance and impact, up, down, staying the same?
We will have, as soon as we finish this, we're gonna get into the 5-year financial forecast, and we'll get into tax rates, fund balance, projected as we move forward, what it was in previous years, et cetera, so we'll have all that.
You know, you get me started talking about fund balance, we'll be here 12 hours. But when we look at the 5-year financial forecast, we look at total fund balance. And I don't want you to think total fund balance is a bank account that is a savings account that we can just withdraw every single dollar and spend however we want to. Part of that you need to maintain for cash flow purposes. And you can't spend the portion that's PAL bills designated for something that's not PAL bill approved. It's hard to get 10 years' worth of data on one spreadsheet, make it make sense, but we'll do that. I'm excited about it.
So on that last slide, any other questions on that? We got clear direction? Anything else on that slide before we move to the last one? Okay. And then the last slide is just more about upcoming meetings. Obviously, after tonight, we talked about the manager's recommended budget, May 6th. We have a couple sessions coming up, Brew on the Budget, on the 8th and the 15th at Craftworks across the street here at 5:30. And then public hearing is May 20th, right here. And then we are adding an additional, I'll call it a budget social event. Hadn't quite, we'll have to get Ethan's brain sort of worked on what we call that, but we're looking at additional budget social event, likely sometime that 21st to 31st. We haven't nailed down the date, time, or place yet, but just to seek further public input on the budget process and ask questions, et cetera. And then we anticipate back here, June 3rd, to adopt the budget. And I'm sure Ethan's going to be plastering this stuff. I've already seen some of the 8th and the 15th, pushed out, and he'll continue to plaster that stuff everywhere.
I have one question on the Brew on the Budget, which I also like the name. Do we have we figured out what the format's going to be for residents? If it's more going to be like a presentation Q&A, or if there's going to be like, the transportation projects and people can give their input, and, like what's the setup going to be like?
At 760, they have that one area to the side where the chili cook-off was held. They've designated that area for us. We can put things up on they'll be up on all the screens in there. It'll be the budget review, probably a slideshow that's rolling. And then people can ask us questions or ask staff questions as they come up about what's there, or also weigh in on anything they think we should be adding. Be a little more informal, less presentation, but we do have a microphone, and we could do a presentation if we wanted to.
So in addition to kind of just like the verbal, giving opinions and stuff, are we going to have a way for folks to leave like a written as well?
We have not talked about that, but we, Ethan and I can work on that.
Okay, cool. That would be great.
Other one, which will be mid to late May, will be here in this boardroom, and it has a cute name that Ethan's come up with about like budget in the boardroom or something like that. But it'll be here at the same time frame, in the same kind of format, just so people have an opportunity to weigh in here versus going to a brewery public place. Yep.
I had an idea yesterday when I was driving around town looking at all the different projects. And I don't know when the appropriate time to bring it up or to mention it, so I'm just going to do it. I haven't mentioned it to anybody here. So I know. So one thing, like I was at Holbrook Park and I noticed I couldn't find a bike rack. And, you know, one of the things we hear a lot about is the traffic. The priorities from people are sidewalks and connectivity and wanting to be able to get on the greenway. And we have all this great, amazing development happening there. Is there ever something that towns can do to incent people to buy bikes? Get people out of their cars? Because that's the problem. If you're sitting in traffic, you're part of the problem. Is something we can do to incent people to purchase bikes?
You stumped me. I'd probably, where's Heather when I need her? That's something I probably need to, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there are grant programs we have done that, you know, but those are typically bikes for, you know, folks who need bikes. Those type programs are bike helmets and things like that, or we hand out bikes that, you know, but more for the needy. But actually incentivizing folks, I don't know off the top of my head, but we'll do a little research, and before May 6th, Brian's got it on his list to see what's out there. So I almost bet my house and car there'd be one out there soon.
When? I also had this thought that when we're talking to new businesses that are wanting to come to downtown, that, you know, is there something that they can do, like, can we ask them to put a bike rack outside their business, or something that we can incentivize there too?
And Brian maybe have a comment.
I don't need an
'cause,
answer on it, I'm just
I
wondering.
mean, I've seen them at various businesses that do, especially a lot of the foreign companies.
We always encourage new businesses to put them in. They're not a requirement, but we always encourage them to do that.
Is that it? Question? All right, I think we're going to roll into the 5-year financial forecast. And Jackie probably had to go get a drink to get prepared for it. No, because I know she's not going to allow me to do all the talking on the 5-year financial forecast. She'll probably tackle me if I do. So, hopefully, yes, you can see that fine. So some of you were talking about how this works, and Patty, you wanna jump over there too, or you gonna be able to talk there? Well, you can be her. I know what she's doing. She wants you to get up and talk. That's what it is. She wants you to talk. So while Patty's getting ready, I can't remember whether we've shown this before. Maybe we showed just a kind of very small overview at the budget workshop. And you'll see 22, 23 are actual numbers, so those are audited numbers. And obviously, you can see the categories on the side where it's personnel, operating, et cetera. And you'll see where Jackie and I will probably focus here later on. But FY '24 is a estimated year end. And then obviously, what you'll see in 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, all those CIP projects we talked about when we were looking out at the budget workshop, and you saw where they were sort of placed and how we would spend in those years. That's all baked in here. There's also, what we think personnel costs will be, et cetera. And I wouldn't get too hung up. And once you get past sort of 25, 26, I would not look out in 27, 28, 29. It's a good forecast to see how you're doing, but when we have a revow in 28, I can't tell you how much homes are going to go up in 28. If I could, I'd be probably the president right now. So it's just no way for me to predict that. And then what's going to be sitting here, and what they're going to want to do, and how many grants we get 4 years from now. Well, this is a good tool for us to look at and kind of see how we're doing and make sure we're not all of a sudden going to get the town in financial trouble. And I know Jackie's probably chomping at the bit to take over, but I would move down just a little bit where we're going to probably focus, where I think maybe Commissioner Bergman was talking about fund balance and things like that, and I'll be quiet because I know Jackie wants to talk. I'm gonna get a bottle of water.
So several years ago, the then board asked us to have a 5-year forecast, and so I wrote this one. I don't want non-Excel or less Excel people to say, oh my gosh, I don't want to, she says I could play with that spreadsheet, but I don't want to mess up the spreadsheet. Get in there and do whatever you want to with it and just don't save it. I don't want you to think that this is staff's recommendation of what we do. The whole purpose behind building it the way it's built is to create a what-if statement. What happens if we change the tax rate to this? Am I okay if the fund balance is that? There are formulas all over this spreadsheet. You might well play with it and override a formula, and that's okay. I invite you to sit down with me one-on-one, or as many of you want to, come together and let's play with it. As a commissioner, there are what, Patty? 8 tabs in this spreadsheet, and the forecast is on one tab, and the one tab that's got the forecast in it probably has 50 rows. More than that, 75 rows. Every row is important to me, but as a board member, Jackie, Patty are super into every single line item. Y'all probably less into a specific line item. What people will remember is what was the tax rate and what did you do with fund balance. Fund balance is synonymous with how did you impact the town's savings and financial condition, right? And so we start every year with what was this year, what was the fund balance at the beginning of the year. So there are several columns of an audited figure where we've made this tie to our total general fund balance. Already talked about how you can't spend every single dollar of fund balance, and you must be careful because some of that is designated to be spent in a particular way. Bobby, if you'll come down to row 50, I'll just, all the way down to 50, how big a loser am I for having memorized what row number it is? There is no requirement that you have the tax rate at 2275 or any other number any time ever in the future. But once you change the rate in row 50, we're assuming that you're okay with keeping it that for the future. Bobby, you could go into L50 and change the tax rate from 2275. See how it's pulling from the prior year? You don't have to. You could take it up 2275 in FY25. You take it back down to 21 the next year. Take it down to 21. And it's going to recalculate how much tax that would generate, and it's going to impact the top. And so notice how once we dropped it to 21, then it's carrying the 21 over. You can make an independent decision every single year, and we encourage you to look at the impact of your decisions and change whatever year you want to. If you want them all to be 2275 or 50 or 14 cents, change it. And look and check out the impact of those decisions. I've lost it now, Bobby. I think it's row 36. So when we changed the tax rate to 2275, cumulative fund balance, that's row 36. So that's the second row that I think I'd like for you to pay particular attention to those 2 rows. What did you do to the tax rate, and then what did that change? How did that change our total fund balance? So at the end of the most recently completed fiscal year, at the end of 23, our total fund balance was 22. Let's call it 22.3. I don't want you to look at this and say, well, Jackie put 22.75 in the version of it she displayed, and if we do that, and if we fund all of the capital at the rate that we funded in the CIP, and if you increase the personnel and operating at the rates we've assumed below, Jackie must be okay with the total fund balance being 38. I'm not telling you that that's the right amount of fund balance, but I'm telling you, if you adopt a 22.75% tax rate, and if you spend at the rates that we've suggested, then that's what you will have done to fund balance. If you feel good about that, that's the right thing to do. But if you say, you know what, I don't think I want to be a part of a board that took fund balance from 66 and spent down a third of it, spent down to the 38 rate, then go in and change the tax rate or take some funding of some projects out. Anthony and I have a fun little argument. Jackie, even if you fund all those projects, you won't be able to get them completed at this pace. And so you're making people think that fund balance is going to drop unnecessarily low. He's got a point, and I agree with everything he said, except once you fund that project, unless you stop that project mid-year, Whether it takes us 1 year or 4 years to complete that project, eventually that's going to have come out of fund balance. And that's how I would defend the argument of take the project out in whatever year. There's one more row, I don't remember what row it is, Bobby. It's a 4 or 5 up from where you are right now. I really like existing debt service. Is that row 30? So notice how that changes over time. So it was 55.5 in FY '24. It goes up to 6.5 million in '25. We have issued the debt on Town Hall. It's outstanding. The local government commission will require that we make those debt service payments. So that's a requirement. For the bonds that we talked about, we might like to issue in October. The debt service for those bonds is in row 30, is that 31, Bobby? I'm sorry, old people and bifocals. So if you issue future debt, any debt that you've not yet issued, we want to delineate those because you've got decisions to make about whether you issue future debt, but making the debt service payments on debt that's outstanding, you're going to adopt a budget that's got a minimum of that in it, or the LGC will come in, usurp your authority, and you will have a tax rate high enough to, at a minimum, pay those debt service payments. You can argue with me, it's okay, that I took too conservative a view on how much sales tax dollars will be generated. I'd like for you to have a robust conversation with me about that. So you've heard me fuss before that because our sales tax is so dependent on what other people do with their tax rate, what the other local governments in Mecklenburg County, we receive about 1 1/3% of the sales tax dollars generated in Mecklenburg County. So you do almost anything you want to with the tax rate, and as a practical matter, it's not like you're going to double our sales tax dollars. So you know what if I guessed low? If I did guess low, then you're going to have contributed more to fund balance unless you authorize me to spend it. There is probably a more conservative than some people would like estimate, and Burden and myself there, on how much we might generate in investment earnings next year. I don't know what the Fed's going to do with interest rates. Now, I've heard they're going to drop, and I think they'll probably drop slower than they originally planned. But if we increase those revenue estimates and that revenue ends up not coming to fruition, what that forces us to do is to either use additional fund balance or if we have to make mid-year cuts. Mid-year cuts are very painful and hard, and I attempt hard to avoid that. And so I will defend making a low revenue estimate for that reason. Somebody, who do I want to pick on? Nick? Oh, it's okay, I'm going to pick on you. So Bobby, let's leave FY '25's tax rate at 22.75. Nick, tell us what to change FY '26 to. Let's go back up and look and see what fund balance is right now. So total fund balance at the end of '26 at a 22.75 cent tax rate, it is 54. So Nick, change it up, down, change whatever number you want to, and let's see what the impact of fund balance will be.
But just for clarity, it looks like in '25, we're going to eat into roughly 5 million in fund balance, correct?
Yes, sir.
In the following year,
If
8
you
million.
fund the projects, and now it sounds like we're going to add, it's going to be 150,000 less than that based on the actions we've taken tonight, but yes, if you change absolutely nothing to Anthony's recommended budget, and if revenues and expenses came in exactly the way we budget them, that's not going to happen either, by the way, then the FY '25's ending fund balance would be 62, right?
And our policy on the fund balance minimum is what percent?
40% of the
40%,
prior
I
year's
thought.
budgeted revenues.
So at what point, just looking at these numbers, does it drop below that 40%?
Oh, I think it's in one of the hidden rows. I think it's hidden between 36 and 39. Will you unhide the rows 36 to 39? That's total fund balance. If your total fund balance as a percentage of revenues is 52, I would, in '28, I suspect you'd be, but that 12%, at least 12% of that is going to be reserved somehow. I think you'd be below it by '28. But we can, well, I like this spreadsheet, I'm going to defend it. It's a heavy lift asking us to not only estimate total fund balance, but estimate what portion of it is in the emergency services fund balance and what portion of it is in the stormwater fund balance and what portion of it is in POW bill and so forth. So,
So make 26, 24 cents.
okay. So you can see fund balance be at least 2 million higher. Fund balance to be 56 instead of 54 at the end of 26 if you changed it to 2275 and then made it 24 the next year.
Can you change 24 to 20, the 17 cents that we're currently at, can you change that to 24? Just so we could see what that would do?
Oh, I don't think it'll pull retrospectively, no.
Okay, can you change the 25 to 24?
Change 25 to, yeah, everybody should get to have their fun. Everybody besides Nick should get to pick a rate. Oh, you know what? We've already hard keyed the FY '25 too. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I've already keyed in what we think the budget numbers.
And what I would say, just to, I know Jackie and Patty love to hear me, I'm perfectly fine and feel very confident. I know you see dipping into the fund balance in FY '25, but I'm perfectly confident with the 2275 that we're proposing. As we said, we're gonna not be able to hire everybody in time. We're gonna underspend. Projects are gonna slide. We're gonna get grants. All sorts of things happen that there's no way, we could get everything perfect. So I know Patty and Jackie probably don't remember the number we had in, just for example, in FY '24, what we had, we were dipping in the fund balance. Probably a pretty significant number, but a good example is we're already showing a positive contribution to fund balance because of some of the things I've talked about.
My office up front is lonely. People don't visit me. Come visit me and let's sit down and let's talk about the monthly financial statements Patty's distributing. Go back and look at the number of reserve for encumbrances and fund balance appropriated that your most recent financial statements say. Capital projects happen slower than I'd like, slower than most of us would like, but they're still funded projects. So at the point where those projects actually get paid for, paid out, your fund balance will be much lower. But listen to the other words I've said. It bears repeating. We pick a revenue estimate, generally conservative enough, unless the absolute bottom drops out of the economy. We're going to hit that revenue estimate. Patty has violated the law. She's not good at violating the law. Patty has violated the law if she allows the police chief to spend more than his $17 million budget or whatever his number is. She's violated the law if she lets Stephen or Kevin or Brian or anybody else spend more than their total budget. So what do we do when we do our expense budget? We try to guess high. And so if we guess low for revenue and we've guessed high for expense, then Anthony's point is that our contribution to fund balance is usually going to be a little bit better than what we predict on this spreadsheet. I bet what Stephen's trying to tell me is you want to keep a little bit more in fund balance than other places likely because of the number of projects on which we say participate with CRTPO, and we have to upfront that money and then wait for them to pay us back for it. We have not requested all of the contributions yet on Main Street. That street's been open since December. It's been open a long time. It will be a longer time than Jackie would like for it to be when we receive our final contributions from DOT on their portion of that road. So if I'm out of pocket upfront cash on a project that big for a number of months, you're going to have some savings to help float those expenses.
Anthony, can you remind us why in fiscal year '24 the tax rate was set at 17? I think you had proposed it at 19, even though it was set at 17, knowing we were going to build a town hall, have firefighters, and bonds.
Yeah, we had, I'm sure Jackie wants to jump in here too. We had proposed a 19-cent tax rate. Obviously, as you said, the board chose to go with the 17.6. Knowing, obviously, they put us down the path, we started spending funds on town hall. obviously started moving in the direction of converting fire department over, and those costs were coming. But at that time, the board chose to, even though manager recommended 19, they chose to go with 17.6. Obviously, it wouldn't be as much of an impact on citizens if we were stuck at 19 instead of 17.6. Fund balance would be a little bit different, et cetera. So I can go on and on, but the short version is it wouldn't be as much of an impact as you going from 17.6 to potentially 22.75. And it may have made a little bit of difference on how much we would have needed to go up this year, definitely percentage-wise, but because you would have maybe had a little more revenue, obviously, that it could have been a little bit lower.
The town board can adopt any tax rate they want to in any tax year. FY '24 was a revaluation year. In a revaluation year, you're required by state law to disclose what a revenue-neutral tax rate would be. The revenue-neutral tax rate was 17.6 cents. The manager recommended 19 cents. The board decided to go with 17.6, which was revenue-neutral. Revenue-neutral does not mean that your property tax bill will be the same amount from one year to the next, because your property value might have changed differently than the average value. And so that doesn't mean everybody's bill is the same. In addition, the state law calculation includes if we were ordinarily growing at an average rate of 3%, then 3% of that growth was assumed to be natural growth in the system and not attributed to the change in value.
That's all we have, Mayor. And like I say, we have, I don't know what time we started, 5 o'clock? Obviously, if you want to ask questions to 8 o'clock, I'll leave that up to you. But as far as from a staff presentation standpoint, I think that's all I have. Jackie, anything else from you?
No, just reiterating, it is an absolutely sincere invitation. Let's sit down and play with this spreadsheet of whatever tax rate you want it to be. How comfortable are you about fund balance? Jackie, what are your theory about fund balance? I like talking about this.
I've got one more thing. Can we go back to the slide that had the breakdown? It had the proposed tax rate, but it also had like the 1 point, yes, that one. I just wanted, I'll ask it as a question. Would you say that the primary, one of the most important primary responsibilities of a municipality is public safety?
I probably don't need to say that. I imagine the citizens will say the same thing, but yes.
Okay, that's all.
I'm done, and we'll sit here and take all the questions you got. And there are other, obviously, there's several other opportunities for questions too. This is, gosh, I didn't remember that, but I went home and thought about other things. We've got other meetings to ask questions, so we've got plenty more to ask questions as you see fit.
Well, I imagine after the events and speaking with more people and having all this information now, we'll be able to digest it and process it, and there'll be lots of opportunities for more questions, so.
And we'll send Jackie,
And ideas.
Bobby, whoever, make sure we send all this to the board so they can play with the 5-year financial forecast and all that good stuff.
That concludes our budget workshop for today. Yep. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.